Hi, Abby here again. As I've been sewing more, I'm finding that I'm using techniques that I don't even know the names of. So I figured it's time to go back and learn some basics. Today, I will be going over some simple seams. A straight seam, a double straight seam, a curved seam, a cornered seam, a basting seam, and bar tacks. You may recognize some of these seams as things that I have used in my previous projects. Well, let's get started with the straight seam. Line up the fabric with the face sides together. Use a regular straight stitch. The seam allowance, which is the distance between the seam and the edge of the fabric, is typically 5/8 of an inch, but can range from 1/4 of an inch to 1 inch. Sew a straight line using a back stitch at the beginning and the end. Make sure the selvage is the same distance throughout the seam. This is the most common seam and can be used as a base for other, more intricate seams. A double straight seam is exactly as it sounds. The extra seam adds durability. Stitch a straight seam at 5/8 of an inch using a back stitch at the beginning and the end. Then make the same seam at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Your seams should be parallel and evenly spaced. A curved seam is also self-explanatory. Pin the pieces of fabric face side together. Shorten the stitch length and go nice and slow. Reposition the curve of the fabric as it moves through the machine so that the selvage remains the same throughout. I used the 5/8 inch mark for this seam. This is another simple, yet not necessarily easy process, and you may find that you just need practice. Start by sewing a straight seam at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Backstitch at the beginning. Stitch until you reach 5/8 of an inch from the bottom of the fabric. You might need to walk the needle into the proper position. Leave the needle in the down position, which means still in the fabric, and lift the presser foot. Turn your work 90 degrees. Line up the selvage with the 5/8 inch mark and sew to the end of the fabric. Use a backstitch at the end. A basting seam is a holding seam that will later be removed. It is similar to a straight seam, but with longer stitches and no backstitching. I used a 5mm stitch for this example. Basting seams are usually done on the selvage. This can be between 3/8 of an inch and 1/2 an inch. Bar tacks create an anchor stitch used for reinforcement, like on the corner of a pocket. Change the machine setting to the zigzag function. Adjust the length of the stitch to 0. You may change the width of the stitch if desired. Sew a few stitches side to side. So that is it for simple seams. This has been part 1 of a series, so please stay tuned for more. I hope you had fun, and if you learned anything, even better. If you've got any questions or anything to add, please do so in the comments below. Thanks for watching.